A good day to you wherever you are watching, listening from. That is if you're from abroad, and a very good evening to you if you're watching or listening from Kenya. This is the Black Hot Fire Network, and this is Dimore with the news update. I'll be telling you what has been happening around Africa, around Kenya, and of course, what hit the headline today. I'll be keeping you on the know. You don't need to go looking at what happened from. I'm gonna keep you on the know. So welcome to the Black Hot Fire News Update with me, Dimore. And I have a lot has happened today in Africa, some sad news, some good news. And so we're going to be talking about all of them. And I'll start with Kenya, where President Ruto today urged Kenyans to elect women governors, saying they do a better job. President William Ruto has suggested the prospect of exclusively assigning governorship position to female candidates. Speaking on Tuesday during the official opening of the second Homa Bay County International Investment Conference, President Ruto said that 2 out of the 3 state commission special economic zones were exceeding expectations under the leadership of female governors. Ruto, while noting that the suggestion was mooted to him by National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, highlighted that the achievements of the special economic zones were mainly due to the ability of women to excel in leadership. He similarly indicated the willingness of his government to accommodate 30% female representation in the Council of Governors, as per a request that was made by Council of Governors Chair, that is the Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru. President Ruto subsequently expressed support for female governors nationwide, further stating that they are doing a tremendous job of carrying out their mandates. So that was the president urging Kenyans to elect more governors. He actually said he wishes that he hopes that the governorship role will be left for women, saying that most of the counties that had female governors were the ones that were doing better than counties that did not, that had male governors. In Kenya, there are several female governors, one being the governor of Nakuru, Susan Kihika, the other one being the governor of Kirinyaga, Anne Waiguru, the other one being the governor of Homa Bay, Gladys Wanga. So those are some of the female governors we have in Kenya, and he said they are the best, the counties that are doing the best, citing, so according to him, he said this was because of women being better leaders, being better at leadership. So that was what was happening with William Ruto. And moving on to other news, Colombian coffee farmers, researchers are on a 5-day visit to Kenyan farms. A delegation of coffee farmers and researchers from Colombia on Tuesday toured Nyeri County for a meeting with over 200 local growers drawn from various parts of the country. The delegation that is under the Colombian National Federation of Coffee Growers is in the country for 5 days and will tour the country. The tour is a follow-up of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's visit to Colombia last September, where he pushed for advanced cooperation between the two nations to realize better yields and income for Kenyan coffee farmers. Colombia is one of the largest coffee producers in the world. The team held peer-to-peer sessions with the Kenyan coffee farmers and suggested new ways of having higher yields, including new ways of crop fertilization, new ways of harvesting, new ways of milling, and new ways of marketing. Earlier, the delegation toured the new Kenya Planters Coffee Union, Dandora branch, Nairobi, where they were taken through the process of milling coffee and cataloging. They are expected to visit the Coffee Research Institute and the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization. So the visit is mainly, the main purpose of the visit of the Colombian coffee researchers to Kenya is to teach Kenyan farmers on how to have higher yields, have better crop, better yields, and better grade of coffee. So that was what has been happening with coffee farmers, with the Colombian government visiting. The other news is on the First Lady of the Republic of Kenya, Rachel Ruto. She has been on a span of economic restoration, which I'm going to tell you the reason in a bit, but let's first see the video of the First Lady of Kenya, Rachel Ruto, on an ecosystem, in his campaign. In her campaign, sorry. So let me share the video, just a minute.
Who are attending the 6th United Nations Environment Assembly, UNEA 6 in Nairobi, that began Monday, called on every Kenyan to join President Ruto's call and plant 30 trees each in order to achieve the target by the year 2032. According to the First Lady, the tree planting plan is critical in shaping the future of the environment and contributing significantly to the nation's sustainable development.
There is no doubt that the 15 billion tree growing initiative has multiple benefits to our nation and the globe. Our forests are the lungs of the earth, sustaining ecosystems, biodiversity, and human well-being. Forests play a critical role in regulating global temperatures through sequestration of greenhouse gas emissions. As a result, increased forest cover contributes directly to Kenya's efforts to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in line with our nationally determined contribution targets.
The initiative advocates for green financing to bridge funding gaps in restoration activities, incorporates agroforestry, promotion of green jobs and nature-based enterprises, and encourages women and youth to participate in the green and circular economies. Over the past year, we have grown approximately 3 million trees in our forests and in learning institutions. Additionally, we have adopted 200 hectares, which is 500 acres, at Kakamega Forest, Shikuza Block, for restoration.
So that is the First Lady of the Republic of Kenya. Her name is Rachel Ruto, talking about how they plan to plant 15 billion trees in a year. And I followed that video. I'll follow that video with another video of what has been happening with the carbon credit market, with Saudi farms bidding for carbon credits in Kenya. So I'll share the two videos, then I'll let you join the dots.
Some 16 South. The companies bought more than 2.2 million metric tons of carbon credits on Wednesday at an auction in Kenya. Auction organizer Regional Voluntary Carbon Market Company, or RVCMC, have billed the event as the world's largest sale of its kind. The company was founded by the Saudi Public Investment Fund and Saudi Tadawul Group. It will launch a full-time exchange in Riyadh in the first 6 months of next year. Some 70% of the credits at the auction were generated by projects in Africa, according to RVCMC. Rehan Algizi is the CEO for the company.
Well, we're here to walk the talk. We're here on the ground in Kenya, Nairobi. We selected Nairobi to be our destination to shed the light on exactly what you mentioned, the climate change issues that we see here in Africa, which is something very important for us. Kenya is a small polluter, contributing less than 1% of annual global emissions, but it has been hit hard by climate change in recent years, with devastating droughts killing crops, wildlife, and livestock. Companies see a voluntary carbon market as essential in helping them to meet environmental targets. They allow investment in projects that lock away climate warming emissions that they are unable to cut with their own operations. Consultants McKinsey have estimated the annual global market for voluntary carbon credits could hit $50 billion by 2030. However, the carbon offset market has drawn criticisms that includes a lack of transparency and a limited supply of credits, as well as questions over the quality of projects. Al-Bizi rejected them, saying RVCNC works with two separate independent teams of experts to vet projects that contribute credits for sale. And if there is any red flag, we immediately exclude this from the auction.
So that is to do with the carbon credit market, with Kenya hosting the world's biggest carbon credit market auction. Let me call it an auction. With Kenya hosting one of the biggest, if not the biggest carbon credits auction in the world, with Saudi farms bidding for carbon credits. Carbon credits, those of you who do not know what it is, those who are watching and those who are going to watch this stream later, I know most people know what it is, but some may not know. So carbon credits is literally buying permission to pollute. I'm polluting, so I pay someone else to clean up my mess for me. When I pollute, then I let someone else clean up my mess. It is literally, I dirtify, you clean. So I'm not saying this is the reason. I'll just let you join the dots on the 15 billion tree planting project that is going on, being led by the government of Kenya. And now everybody looks like they're caring about climate change, and everyone is talking about how climate change is affecting Kenya. And if you look at Kenya and most countries in Africa, their carbon footprint is negligible. They produce negligible amount of carbon dioxide to the environment. Their carbon footprint is negligible if you compare it to countries in the West that are industrialized. Most countries in Africa are not even industrialized. They depend on subsistence farming, they depend on farming. So of course the pollution will be low, and not many people have cars in Africa. So of course the carbon footprint will be low. And so you can join the dots for yourself, with the government asking Kenyans to plant trees and the biggest carbon credit auction happening in Kenya. So that is what has been happening in Kenya. Let us now head to Benin, where Benin is thinking of sending 2,000 troops to aid Haiti in gang violence battle. So the Republic of Benin has pledged to deploy 2,000 troops to Haiti as part of a multinational peacekeeping mission to help the Caribbean nation's police force fight against armed gangs. Linda Thomas-Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations on Monday, made this known during a press conference in Guyana. The announcement also comes on the heels of the United States committing $200 million in support, marking a significant international effort to restore peace and democracy in Haiti. Allegedly, the United Nations in October authorized the mission a year after Haiti's unelected government made the request. Since then, the offers to support the security force based on voluntary contributions have come mostly from developing nations in Africa and the Caribbean. Kenya, which was the first nation in Africa to respond to the request, has pledged to lead the mission, offering 1,000 police officers. But a local court, Supreme Court of Kenya, barred the move as unconstitutional. However, President Ruto vowed that the plan will go ahead. Some Caribbean countries that had pledged support had called for more Francophone nations to join the effort. So that is now another country in Benin sending more troops than Kenya. Kenya is planning to send 1,000 troops to Haiti. And now Benin, which is a very, very poor country, Benin is a very, very poor country, and it has now decided that it doesn't have problems. This is a country where I was checking on some statistics. So this is a country where about 44.2% of people they live in abject poverty. So that is half the people in Benin live in abject poverty. So it is a poor country. But then they looked and decided that the best way for them to deal with their poverty is to send troops to Benin to Haiti to help with gang violence. And so it has reached a situation where we are now sending it is like our troops are for hire. So if you give us money, we are going to give you our troops to go do the dirty work, to go get killed, because we all know what will happen with our troops that are going to Haiti. Haiti being a very dangerous country in terms of gang violence.
Benin has offered 2,000 troops to support a planned Kenyan-led international force to help Asian National Police fight armed gangs. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, told a press conference on Monday. The United Nations authorized the mission in October, a year after Haiti's unelected government requested it. The conflict in the Caribbean nation killed close to 5,000 people last year and has driven some 300,000 from their homes, according to the UN. So far, public offers to support the security force, which is based on voluntary contributions, have come largely from developing nations in Africa and the Caribbean. Kenya, which has pledged to lead the mission, offered 1,000 police officers, but a local court later barred the move as unconstitutional. President William Ruto has, however, said the plan will go ahead, and meetings have since continued. A US statement issued on the sidelines of the G20 summit last week had announced financial, personnel, and in-kind commitments to the mission from Benin, France, and Canada. The latter, which later announced $60 million for the mission.
So that is 2,000 troops being sent to Haiti from Benin. That is what has been happening in Benin. And that is, if you add the 1,000 being sent from Kenya, that is 3,000 troops from Africa so far. It looks like it is a trend, and now every country in Africa will try to send troops to Haiti so that they can get those donor fundings, those funds that the US released. And the Supreme Court of Kenya barred the move, called it unconstitutional, but President Ruto said that he's going to proceed with the mission nevertheless. Let us now head to Burkina Faso, where a mosque attack in Burkina Faso is feared to have killed many. An attack on a mosque in eastern Burkina Faso has claimed the lives of dozens of Muslims on the same day as another deadly attack on Catholics attending a mass. Armed individuals attacked a mosque in Natiobaini on Sunday around 5 a.m., resulting in several dozens being killed. The victims were all Muslims, most of them men, who had come for morning prayers, according to eyewitnesses. Another local source said, and I quote, "The terrorists entered the town early morning. They surrounded the mosque and shot at the faithful who were gathered there for the first prayer of the day." Soldiers and members of the volunteers for the defense of the civilian forces that supports the military were also targeted, and the sources described it as a large-scale attack in terms of the number of assailants who had wreaked substantial damage. So Natiobaini, where the accident occurred, is a rural community about 60 kilometers off Fadangorma, the main town in Burkina's east region, which has seen regular attacks by armed groups since 2018. On the same day as the attack on the mosque, at least 15 civilians were killed and 2 others injured during an attack on a Catholic church during Sunday Mass in northern Burkina Faso, according to eyewitnesses. And this happened in a village called Esakane village in what is known as the Three Borders Zone in the northeast of the country, near the common borders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. So those are people who are killed in Burkina Faso after unknown people attacked a mosque and a Catholic church, and it is not yet clear how many people were killed, but initial reports indicate that at least 15 Catholic worshippers were killed. The number of Muslims is feared to be higher, but it is not confirmed how many people were killed in the attacks. So it is not a religious war because both the Christians and the Muslims were attacked. And this is Burkina Faso, a country that we talked about yesterday. And so this is what I was talking about a few weeks ago on my show when I talked about sponsored chaos. We are experiencing sponsored chaos in Burkina Faso right now, with people being killed in churches and in mosques to create that impression that there is instability going on, and that is what has been happening in Burkina Faso. It's a very sad story with 15 people confirmed, 15 Christians confirmed dead. I'll report more on this tomorrow when it is confirmed how many Muslims died, but the number of Muslims is feared to be even more as compared to that of the Christians who were killed. Let us now move to lighter stories that are not as sad as the Burkina Faso story. Let us now head to Egypt, where we have another sad story where a ferry sinks in the Nile in Egypt, killing at least 10 people. So a ferry carrying day laborers sank in the Nile just outside the Egyptian capital, killing at least 10 of the 15 people on board. That happened on Monday. The 5 who survived, so there were 15 people on board, 10 died, 5 survived. The 5 who survived were transported to a hospital and later discharged. The cause of the sinking was not made immediately clear. The ministry allocated compensation of 200,000 Egyptian pounds, that is around $6,000 to each family of the deceased, and 20,000 Egyptian pounds, that is about $600 to each of the 5 injured. The laborers were on their way to work at a local construction firm. It took rescue teams hours to recover the bodies, according to local media, which aired live stream videos on social media platforms showing divers searching for the dead as villagers waited on the Nile banks. The incident took place in the town of Monshahet El Kanater in Giza, which is one of the 3 provinces forming Greater Cairo. Many Egyptians use boats as a way of transport, especially in Upper Egypt and the Nile Delta. Sailing along the Nile is also a favorite pastime during holidays in the Arab world's most populous country, that is Egypt. In 2022, 2 people died and 8 went missing after a small truck they were riding slid off a ferry and plunged into the Nile. And in 2015, 35 people died in a collision between a passenger boat and another boat in the Nile. So that was what another sad update from Egypt, with 10 people dead in an accident. So that is another very, very sad update. Looks like today we have several sad updates. Let us now head to Nigeria, a country that never lacks circuses. It's a country of circuses. So what happened today was Nigerian workers have started a 2-day nationwide protest. A two-day protest kicked off in Nigeria's commercial hub, Lagos, on Tuesday morning, shortly after other locations nationwide had started demonstrations. One of the country's main union, the Nigerian Labour Congress, the NLC, has called workers to demonstrate outrage on the mounting hardships and insecurity. Nigerians are living through one of the West Africa's nation's worst economic crisis in years, triggered by surging inflation and the consequences of monetary policies that have pushed the currency to an all-time low against the dollar. We talked about this yesterday. Nigeria is going through one of its worst economic crises, and it is majorly due to economic policies that were implemented when Bola Tinubu took power. Bola Tinubu implemented policies that are almost similar to what the Kenyan President William Ruto did. So what he did the moment he entered office, the first thing that he did was get rid of the subsidies. And subsidies help caution citizens of a country against the high price of, for example, the price of gas was high on the global market. By gas, I mean petroleum products was high on the global market. And so most countries were using subsidies to shield its citizens from the high cost. And so that was what was happening in most African countries. But the moment Bola Tinubu took power, so did William Ruto. They did away with the subsidies. That was a directive from the IMF. And so doing away with the subsidies meant the price of petroleum products, the price of fuel went up. And the moment the price of fuel goes up in a country like Nigeria, in a country like Kenya, in a country like Uganda, these are countries that depend on electricity that is generated by diesel generators. It is generated through geothermal, through it's hydropower, and most of hydropower stations use diesel. And so the moment the price of fuel, the price of petroleum products goes up, then the price of power goes up. And the moment the price of power goes up, then the production cost of most commodities in the country, including foodstuffs, processed foods, and everything will go up because the price of power has gone up. And now industries have to pay more to produce what they were producing. And what that will mean is that now things will, basic commodities like bread, basic necessities like milk will not be affordable anymore because they'll be at a higher price. And to make this worse, the policies also made the Nigerian naira weak against the US dollar. And Nigeria being one of the countries that really depend on imports, and the imports are cashed out using the US dollar, of course. So the moment the currency is weak, then what that means is the people of Nigeria the importers will not be able to import things cheaply. They'll import it at a higher cost, and the burden will, of course, be transferred to the residents, to the citizens of Nigeria. And that is why Nigerian workers have started a 2-day nationwide protest because of the worst economic crisis that they have seen in years. So on Monday, the 26th of Feb, the finance minister announced there is a resumption of direct cash transfers to help over 12 million vulnerable households. So the government is saying that it is going to transfer cash to 12 million vulnerable households. I'm going to follow up on this, and I'm going to tell you if this will work and whether 12 million people are going to receive the cash that the finance minister promised. The situation is even worse in conflict zones in northern Nigeria, where farming communities are no longer able to cultivate what they eat, and they are being forced to flee the violence. So things are already bad in Nigeria, and they are being made worse by the terrorism that is happening in Nigeria with Boko Haram, with the hundreds of kidnappings that happen every day. So it is even worse with the insecurity, and farmers in northern Nigeria cannot even be able to farm anymore. And that is why there's even a food problem in Nigeria. People are dying of hunger because the farmers in northern Nigeria are not able to farm anymore, and most of them have migrated to safer areas. And things are getting really, really bad in Africa. Nigeria is allegedly Africa's largest economy because it is a big country with a large population. Its gross domestic product is driven mainly by services such as banking, followed by manufacturing and processing, then lastly by agriculture. The challenge is that the country is far from sufficient for Nigeria's. So the challenge is that the economy is far from sufficient for the 210 million people living in Nigeria who heavily rely on imports to meet their daily needs, from cars to foodstuffs to clothing. Everything in Nigeria is imported. And with the naira doing really bad, then of course they are going to suffer. So Bola Tinubu is partly to blame for this, because shortly after taking power in May last year, Bola Tinubu took bold steps to fix the ailing economy and attract investors. One of the things he did, he announced the end of gas subsidies. He called them costly. He said we can no longer continue financing the costly gas subsidies, which the government said they were no longer sustainable. Meanwhile, the country's multiple exchange rates were unified to allow market forces to determine the rate of the local naira against the US dollar, which in effect devalued the currency. There were no adequate measures to contain the shocks that were bound to come as a result of the reforms, including the provision of a subsidized transportation system and an immediate increase in wages. You know, if you take away the subsidies, at least then increase the wages of the people, then they'll be able to afford the things that they were affording before without having to depend on the subsidies that you are offering. So now the government just did away the subsidies, introduced a lot of taxes, but nothing changed in terms of the wage. The wages are the same, the salary is the same, but the price of everything has gone up. So that is what has been happening in Nigeria. So the workers in Nigeria are currently in a protest. They're trying to see whether things are going to get better. But then all I have to remind them is that their president is Bola Tinubu, in case they were hoping things will get better. And I don't understand why, but I understand it is a directive from the IMF that fuel subsidies have to be done away with. But doing away with fuel subsidies in Africa is a costly decision, because I would say Africa is fuel driven. Fuel drives the economy, because the moment the price of fuel goes up, then the price of everything will go up. The other thing is devaluing the currency in a country that is import reliant is not also a good idea. So I don't know who is advising the president of Nigeria and the chairman of ECOWAS, Bola Tinubu, but all we can say is we wish the people of Nigeria all the best for the next few years, because it's about to get tougher than it is. And that is all we had on the Black Hot Fire News Update. I can see my time is up. Kamlesh and Joby are coming up next with a musical show. Is it a musical show, Kamlesh? Yeah, they're coming up with a musical show, and Kamlesh is already psyched up for it. So that is all we had on a night where Benin is thinking of sending 2,000 troops to aid Haiti in gang violence battle. On a night where a mosque attack in Burkina Faso is suspected to have killed many people, and a Catholic attack in Burkina Faso also killed 15 people. It is also a night where a ferry that sank in the Nile in Egypt killed at least 10 people, with 5 people surviving. It is also a night where Nigerian workers have started a 2-day nationwide protest to call for the government to intervene and make living standards a little bearable. So I hope you enjoy the rest. I hope you enjoy the rest of the night if you're from Kenya, and the rest of your day if you're from abroad. I'll see you tomorrow on Tubonge, and later on the Black Hot Fires News Update. I hope it's always a pleasure having you.